I'm ready. All right, pleasant good afternoon. We're here at TAPSCon 2023. John Walk, Dan Morgan. And joining us is the athletic director at Concordia Lutheran High School in Tomball, Matt Neidigk. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys.
So, what's new?
Obviously getting into the summer, trying to get things ready for next fall. We made a couple of changes at Concordia. Got a new head girls soccer coach, new volleyball coach. Kim Odinga, who had been our coach for numerous years, is coming back as our head coach. So she's getting that program going again. And so just trying to keep transitioning where we've been headed and keep getting stronger.
Take a look here. 1, 2, 3. Kind of average year. Yeah.
Yeah,
if I look at the Henderson Cup numbers.
Yeah, thank goodness for our fine arts department because they rock it every year for our overall. But from an athletic standpoint, definitely wasn't the level of what we've been in the past. And so I think that's, when you can have a lot of success, sometimes you can become complacent a little bit, maybe need to reevaluate that, see where we're at. Honestly, in my opinion, I think it's in our girls' programs where we really need to reevaluate a little bit, and we've been doing that this spring to see where we can head forward.
Who do you all compete with from a student standpoint to draw kids in?
Well, right around us, in TAPS you have Rose Hill Christian that's down the street, and Frassati, which are the closest to us. You've got Woodlands Christian isn't too far because that area of the Woodlands is a big draw for private school. John Cooper in the SBC, and then there's a little bit of a pool from our area where we still see a lot of kids choose to go in town to St. Pius or St. Thomas or St. Agnes, which I have never been offended, and I've always been impressed, even from my days back at Lutheran North, of how strong families that are in Catholic education will stay with Catholic education. And I think that's incredible in this day and age, honestly. So I've always been impressed by that.
No, certainly you can. It's anybody that is committed to their faith, no matter what that faith is, you have to respect that.
Absolutely. And we're not one of those schools that is going to downplay other places to try to build ourselves up. We're very strong in what Concordia is, what we stand for, what we're about, and athletically that we're going to try to offer top-notch programs. But our mission as a school is to be extremely well-rounded. And I think we've always done a great job. And why we've been successful winning Henderson Cups or not is that it's not just athletics, it's fine arts, it's academics, and that we're a very mission-minded school. So, sometimes you take kids in and not take kids in,
right.
But we're going to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to those kids.
You're also badge athletic executive committee, and you've served in that role for quite some time. Haven't had a chance to sit down and do our annual visit with Brian and that, but as AEC, what were your biggest challenges this past year, and are they going to be the same for this coming year?
I think one of the things this year was we had a huge changeover in the AEC, a lot of new people. When the elections, we went through an election year this year, there was a lot of new. I think just off the top of my head, I'm kind of going through, I think there was only 2 of us that really came back in that. And so, just trying to find time to meet, time when we're together, getting stuff done. Obviously, looking forward, realignment is going to be a big issue. A couple of weeks we have our meeting with the board here in Waco. So that'll be kind of interesting. Because it seems to be a big issue with where people are at, classification-wise. I know in my world of 6A, that's a big concern with the lack of number of schools. So,
well, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lot of discussion this past academic year to where some of the travel is getting to be a challenge for many of the schools at the 6A level. if there's a change in that, is that a AEC or is that a board or is that a combined responsibility to change that model as it relates to 6A, how it currently is today?
I think everything's always with the board and the TAPS office on the ultimate decisions. Speaking for my 6A schools in the South that I have to represent, I would definitely say the challenge from Houston to San Antonio in every sport is significant for schools moving forward. And so that is a major concern. What the exact answer is, we have to really sit down and think about that. You can't tell the San Antonio schools to have a district of 2 schools.
Right.
That's not going to be productive for anybody.
And I think I don't even think I heard it from you. Maybe I just heard it from being out at an event and just overhearing some chatter between people. Is that maybe even there's been some discussion of a 5A, 6A together, and so that you have a larger district, if you will, but then you get into those enrollment number issues. You know, it's not an easy situation.
No, I think what it's hard to look at is I think there's a big gap, right? So if you look at the numbers and you cut off 6A at 425 and 5A goes all the way down to 250, you start talking about I got a school of 260 and I'm having to go play Dallas Bishop Lynch with 1,000.
Right.
And one of the things that's hard for people to take out is history. Right? So they'll look at a 5A school and go, well, they're always really, really good, so they'll compete with the 6A schools. Or, and vice versa. And so I think it's something that I would support if we put into districts and then separated, obviously, for playoffs and still have the 2, just from a travel logistics standpoint. I can just in the Houston area, you could have whether you'd have to probably end up splitting, because when we looked at it at one time, it'd be 11 or 12 schools in 5A and 6A combined into one district. So you'd probably have to split. But man, there would be some really good athletic. And maybe we're just a little bit biased, but that should be some incredible baseball.
Right.
I mean, with the schools that are in Houston competing against each other. But I think, as any organization has its challenges, just like our schools, you have to be willing sometimes to step, and I could get in trouble for this, I don't know, but I could get in trouble, you got to think out of what solutions are out of the box.
Right.
Because I understand that we were a school that was predominantly historically a 5A school. And when we went up, there were some of our sports that were ready for it.
Right.
And we were still on that low end of 6A. And our parents complained about it a lot, and obviously football is always the elephant in the room when it comes to numbers.
Right.
And it's a challenge no matter what level you're at with football. But I don't know if we will, but it would be really interesting to see that possibility, at least from, like I said, from a district standpoint. And then, when we get to the playoffs, you still go with where you're allotted. And it's just when you're in administration, you learn about a lot more things than when you're just coaching. I shouldn't say just coaching and teaching, but
right.
But you learn about the financial side of things, and you see that transportation budgets go up 3 times in today's world, and is that sustainable?
Yeah, because nobody's except the government's printing money, and so you just have some place you just run out, and then you've got to decide. Then you decide where you got to cut, and nobody likes to do that if you don't have to. So.
Hey, Matt, I'm going to jump in here because I wanted to do this earlier, but I didn't get my mic turned on in time. How important is it for you guys to have a program like Trinity Klein that feeds you guys to help build up your core kids there at
It's a significant blessing for us at Concordia, just being a high school only school. It's a unique situation because we have two Lutheran, elementary K through 8 schools, and it's really been unbelievable that Concordia, and next year will be 40 years since the door opened, has had a sustainable and growing model, really being dependent on two independent schools. So we're not connected. So I laugh with people for, the last 15 years, 12, 15 years, till this year, my mother-in-law was the principal at one of them. And I couldn't even go over there and tell them how to run their athletic department, and or vice versa. And so, but having that base of student athletes to go talk to and try to bring to Concordia has been very beneficial for us. I think this year we're going to probably be around 150 freshmen, and we will probably get about 85 to 90 of them from those two schools. But they also had the two largest 8th grade classes that they've ever had in school history. That's what I'm saying about that sustainable model, right? Because if they're kind of down, we could be that base. And so, it is good to have like-minded ministries to be able to work with.
Talk about your bellwether programs, basketball, baseball. Baseball, really good year, just came up a little bit short. A little bit challenging year, I think, for Billy.
The end, absolutely. It's hard to kind of, when you're a coach and you look back on things from a year standpoint, you always try to evaluate and see. And, it was just when we were rolling, we're at St. Thomas playing for, we win. We're going to be tied for the district lead at the time, lose on a last-second buzzer shot, and then it just didn't go well after that. But if I know Bill, one of the things he's going to do is he's going to reevaluate, and our kids will come back ready to go. We've got a good varsity core coming back. Lost some really good players to graduation, obviously, but they'll be ready to go. I think one of the other great things, and sometimes coaches don't agree with me, but our boys basketball district, with the change from Houston to San Antonio, got a lot more competitive than it had been. Yep. And I love that as a coach. I remember years where we would just, it was going to be running clock the majority of the games, but I love that competitiveness where you got to have the kids ready and prepared. And that's like our baseball district. Mm-hmm. You better not sleep. We had 3 out of the 4 teams in the Final Four this year for 6A, and baseball is such an unpredictable sport already. Mm-hmm. But and we lost some really cool key kids in baseball this year to graduation, but we've got a really good core coming back. I would tell you, the depth of our baseball program really showed this year when the fact that we basically played the whole entire year without our number 1 pitcher, who's going to Auburn. Mm-hmm. He did not pitch after the first month of the season, so that was pretty amazing to see.
We'll close with talk about your newest program, lacrosse. How that went for you this year.
I thought overall, maybe not from a wins-loss perspective, we had our best year of lacrosse from a program standpoint and its foundation, and we can really see a talent. We're tremendously young. We were playing, I think we ended up with 32 kids in the program, mm-hmm. and 26 of them were freshmen and sophomores. And you could really see that. Our new coach was really played a really tough preseason before they got into their Class D district schedule, mm-hmm. Against some B teams, and we took some hard lumps, but definitely a program that I see on the rise and headed in the right direction at our school.
Do you have kids that are playing lacrosse that are playing other sports?
Absolutely. That's the one thing that I thought was the best that we've had so far in our lacrosse program, of the interaction between that. I think 10 or 12 of those young kids all play football. 3 or 4 of them played basketball.
Okay.
And then obviously you get in the springtime, it's hard for them to do other stuff. A couple did run track as well at the same time. But our head lacrosse coach's son plays football. So he's a freshman, and so that was really good to see.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that private and parochial schools give you the opportunity to do, whereas you can't necessarily do that in a 6A, 5A public school. It's just a numbers game. So that's great. Well, listen, we don't want to take up your time. We appreciate every time we have the opportunity to visit and talk, and thank you for supporting Dan and I and Dave and what we do, and thank you.
Always. Thank you guys. We really appreciate what you guys do for us. Thank you.
All right. Well, very good. Matt Neidigk, the athletic director at Concordia Lutheran, joining us here at TAPSCon 2023.